A few days ago, my husband's family and I were preparing to depart for our annual family vacation. This tradition, where my in-laws gather and select a destination, provides us with a week-long escape from our daily routines. My husband is handsome and 30 years old, and I am 27 years old and recently married. We had been together for 3 years before tying the knot. This was my first time participating in this family tradition, and I was genuinely excited about it. When we were engaged, my husband had invited me to join them, but since his family hadn't extended a formal invitation, I declined, feeling somewhat awkward. However, this time my mother-in-law, Sandra, personally invited me to join them, which meant a great deal to me. Previously, I sensed Sandra's disapproval of me, as she never made me feel truly welcome in the family. She often seemed distant and somewhat cold towards me, unlike her behavior with others. I believe her attitude towards me changed when my husband and I began dating, and he moved out of their house to live with me. Despite her efforts to conceal it, I could tell that she harbored some resentment towards me for being the reason her son left the family home. Being independent, I had been living away from my parents since college, so living with his or my family was never on the table for me. I made it clear to my husband early in our relationship that I wouldn't entertain the idea of living with his parents or being near them. He understood and respected my stance, as he had been contemplating moving out on his own before we met. However, Sandra's desire for everyone to live together under one roof or nearby persisted. Although my husband's older sister, who is married with a daughter, moved out due to space constraints, she remained nearby, meeting with the family frequently. Sandra views this as the norm and considers my desire for independence unreasonable. Yet my husband and I are content with our living arrangements. He values the privacy he lacked growing up and prefers living away from his family. I am aware that Sandra holds me responsible for her son's decision to live independently, and perhaps she sees me as the reason he doesn't want to live with his family anymore. Apart from that, I can't think of any reason for her not liking me. I've always been very pleasant to my husband's family and have done my best to assimilate into his family, but apparently even that's not enough. A couple of days ago, Sandra made it clear that she still doesn't consider me family, even though I married her son just a couple of months ago. We had been planning the family vacation for months, and I had played an active role in it. Usually my husband's parents pay for all of it, and it's never any trouble for them because they are quite well off. I had assumed it would be the same this time around because my husband had assured me we didn't need to worry about the money beforehand. Just to be clear, I didn't have a problem with paying for myself, but I had been told that I wouldn't need to. So when right before the day we were supposed to leave for our vacation, Sandra sat me down and told me that I would need to pay for myself, it came as quite a shock to me. She had invited me over, saying she wanted to discuss certain things about the trip, so I had gone over by myself since my husband was finishing up work before taking time off. She went on to explain that this was meant to be a family vacation, and that's why she and her husband would cover all the expenses every year. Unfortunately, they didn't consider me family just yet because they felt they hadn't gotten to know me that well. So she expected me to pay for myself but not make much of a fuss about it because that would just spoil the vacation vibe, and she didn't want to start on a bad note. She didn't stop there. She decided to make things worse by telling me that the reason she didn't consider me close enough to call family was because, unlike her son-in-law, she rarely ever got to see me and my husband since we never visited as often as the others. That was one of the reasons why she felt like I wasn't family just yet. I was very hurt by what she said because I felt like I had tried hard to get along with his family, even though Sandra had made it very clear to me that she didn't exactly approve of me. All along, she had led me to believe that I was finally part of the family by letting me be part of the vacation planning. She could have been upfront with me right from the beginning, and I would have been okay with it. But telling me this right before the day we were supposed to leave just seemed unnecessarily cruel and mean. However, I tried my best to hide my feelings and make it seem as though I was okay with this and understood. On the inside, I was upset. I didn't want to say anything until I had discussed this with my husband because I didn't want to react quickly and let my anger get the better of me. So I told her that it was okay, and that I understood where she was coming from, so I would pay for myself. She was a little surprised when I said that it was all fine, and I could tell that this was not the reaction she had hoped for. But I didn't stick around to talk to her afterward and headed back home. It was all I could do to keep myself from bursting into tears as soon as I came home. But I tried to be calm and explain everything to my husband. When my husband saw that I was visibly upset and asked me what had happened at his mother's house, he was furious. He told me he was going to cancel the vacation then and there because he had no interest in spending any more time with his mother after the way she had insulted me. I then admitted to him that I had suspected she didn't like me for quite some time, but I never brought it up because it was just a theory. Now, however, I was beginning to feel that it wasn't just a theory after all, and there might be some truth to it. I explained to him how his mother's behavior towards me had changed when he moved out to live with me. She started acting cold towards me after that. Also, what she had said about me not being close enough to be considered family, because I didn't visit them often, all pointed towards the same explanation. When I told him about it, he said it could be true, because he had always known that family meant a lot to his mother. She wanted him to at least live nearby, and she had been pretty upset when he had first told her he would be moving out to live with me. Though Sandra hadn't shown it at the time, she probably blamed me for it and was still holding it against me, which explained her behavior. However, that was still not an excuse to be so cruel to me and try to humiliate me right before we left for our vacation. I felt awful that day, and while we were talking, my husband and I decided that canceling the vacation and telling her off just wasn't good enough. I wanted her to feel just as bad as I had felt. So he and I decided that we would go along with their plan and meet at the airport the next day. But instead of accompanying them, we would just take a flight somewhere else and leave them at the airport. By the time they could understand what was going on, it would be too late, and we would already be somewhere else. It was a perfectly foolproof plan, and we went through with it. The next day, we met the family at the airport just as we had planned. Then we excused ourselves, saying that we wanted to get some photos clicked, and walked away. They did not suspect a thing because they were too busy talking among themselves. So we headed over to the counter and purchased 2 tickets to a flight that would take off the earliest and to a desirable destination. We ended up picking San Francisco, and right now, we're here, and it's really fun. We were supposed to go to Miami, but I prefer this because it's just me and my husband without anyone who doesn't like me. By the time we had purchased the tickets and taken our seats on the flight, his family had figured out that something was off. They tried to call us several times and had even texted us, but we just ignored all of it. Luckily, an airport is a pretty big place, and they were not able to find us in time to stop us or confront us. We were able to reach our destination without much drama. Once our flight landed, we finally decided to get back to them, and my husband told everybody the truth in the family text thread. He told them about what Sandra had said to me the day before, and said that since this was supposed to be a family vacation and I wasn't family, we had decided that we had better stay out of this altogether out of respect for her. We had expected Sandra to be mad at us and maybe my father-in-law, but we hadn't expected the entire family to turn against us. Hey, did you love and enjoy the story? Take a moment to like and subscribe for more. Everybody seemed pretty mad because we had abandoned them at the airport, and they had been worried sick about us. They had still taken their flight, though, so I don't understand what they were so pissed about. Anyway, they told us that it was irresponsible and selfish of us to just go MIA without a word and leave them wondering about us. They were especially upset with me because they didn't think that Sandra's words warranted such extreme action. They believed that I shouldn't even have thought that they were going to cover for me to come on the family vacation, and that it had been my mistake not to offer to pay for myself and just assume that I could come with them for free. Seeing as how I hadn't made an effort to become a part of the family, they said that I hadn't ever tried to attend their weekly family dinners, or even keep in touch with them online and chat with them every day, which they do apparently. It felt like a whirlwind of emotions. I had no time for them, and while they respected that, they couldn't allow me to use them and treat them like banks. That's why Sandra felt the need to clarify that they were not going to pay for me to join them on the vacation, simply because I hadn't made an effort to get along with them, nor had I offered to pay for myself. I felt insulted because I earned my own money, and I would never expect somebody else to pay for me. So for them to imply that I was being entitled and self-centered was not okay with me. I told them that their expectations were unrealistic and didn't even make sense. They claimed that they had dinner together weekly, but it was every other day. It was completely unfair of them to expect my husband and me to drive to their house after work and have dinner with them so often. We wanted some personal space, and yet we still tried our very best to visit them at least once every 1 or 2 weeks. This had been going on since way before we were even married. I felt like they were overlooking that on purpose just to make it feel like I was in the wrong here when I wasn't, and I knew it. So I reminded them exactly how hard I had tried to become a part of their family to the best of my abilities. And if that was still not enough for them, then there was not much that my husband and I could do. Now they were pissed and said that we were being immature and had ruined their vacation with our selfishness. I feel like I had to make this clear because a lot of the comments were accusing me of isolating my husband, and that's a really heavy accusation to levy against someone. Let me just say that it wasn't just me who thought that the family getting together was a little excessive and unnecessary. No family needs to meet every other day for lunch and dinner. At that point, you might as well be living together. And what was the point of moving away from them if he was just going to visit them every single day? My husband also wanted this, not just me. The two of us had decided that we were going to live a little distance away from them and try to limit our visits to his family to maybe once a week. They were not happy about it, but this is what both of us wanted. It wasn't a decision that I made single-handedly, so I think it's unfair for everybody to just blame me for it. And that's exactly what his family is doing. Regarding what they said about me expecting them to pay for my plane tickets and take me on vacation with them when I hadn't even made an effort to get to know them and become a part of the family, I don't think any of that is true. I did not expect them or feel entitled for them to cover me for the vacation. And if they had told me right from the beginning that they expected me to cover my expenses for the vacation, I would have either agreed to it or I just wouldn't have gone. But for Sandra to sit me down one day before the vacation and tell me that my expenses weren't going to be covered by them because I wasn't family, that just felt premeditated and a deliberate move to make me feel bad. I would not have had a problem paying for myself, as I already mentioned above. They have unreasonable expectations, but I don't. And yes, I have tried hard to get along with them. They're saying that I didn't try to become a part of the family just because I didn't go to their house. Every other day, it's just ridiculous. I did try very hard to get them to like me, and I thought it was just Sandra who didn't approve of me. But as it turns out, none of them like me as much as I thought they did, and that just sucks. Update 1. So my husband and I are still on vacation, but his family is being total pain. I have realized that their being mad at me for not wanting to practically live with them was very unreasonable. I don't need to sacrifice my personal space and privacy just to please them. If they want to be mad at me, then fine, they can go ahead and be mad. But I just wish that they wouldn't make it a point to let us know that they are mad because we know, we just don't care. And they need to accept it. Just yesterday, they decided to text me because texting my husband wasn't working. They told me that whatever I was trying to do to their family was going to fail because their relationship was way too strong for someone like me to break. I thought it was needlessly dramatic of them to make such a big deal out of this because as far as I was concerned, I hadn't done anything to break them apart. But they had insulted me, and that is why my husband and I had decided to separate from them. Once again, they have failed to realize that my husband has free will as well. And I can't exactly force him to do anything that he doesn't want to do. So if we decided to have a separate vacation away from them, it was because my husband wanted the same thing. And I know that it was difficult for them to accept it, but it was the truth. I texted them back, saying that my husband didn't want to spend his vacation with them, and both of us had decided on this. So it was silly of them to just blame me. I also told them that if they had just treated me decently instead of being horrible, then maybe my husband wouldn't have even wanted to separate from them. So if they wanted to blame somebody, then they should just blame themselves. Sandra had been sending me those texts, but I knew that the entire family agreed with her, and it was a shared sentiment that I was somehow controlling my husband and forcing him to break away from his family. I didn't want to engage with her or anybody else from his family after I had said whatever I wanted to tell them. So I decided to block them all and focus on my vacation because I had taken time off for this, and I wasn't about to let it go to waste. I told my husband about the text, and he told me to just ignore it because there was no point in trying to explain anything to them. They were too caught up in themselves to consider that maybe we just want to lead a normal life, and it wouldn't be possible if we were living with them or even around them. They're all just dramatic. Update 2. So we finally came back from our vacation last night, and it was a really fun couple of days. But now that it's over, it's back to work. We were expecting to have a peaceful week back here, but that's not going to be possible because his family also returned today. We had no contact with his family when we were on vacation because both of us had blocked them all on social media platforms, and we had also blocked their numbers. They didn't know where we were, so they couldn't get to us in any way. It had been quite peaceful away from them and the drama. But now that we're back, and so are they wasted no time in trying to reach out to us, only to create drama. We had just come back home from a long day at work when we heard somebody at our doorstep ringing the bell like nobody's business. We knew that it had to be somebody from my husband's family, even before we opened the door. And sure enough, it was Sandra standing right outside. We didn't want her to come inside and told her that we were really tired from work and were not interested in speaking to her right now. But she pushed past us and entered the living room anyway. I was annoyed and told her that I wanted her out of my house because the way she had behaved with me before the vacation was unacceptable. I had nothing to say to her, and neither did I want to hear from her because I just knew that she was going to find a way to blame me for everything. But instead, she told me to shut up and said that she wasn't here to talk to me anyway. She was here to talk to her son, so I needed to stay quiet. I didn't like the tone she took with me, so I told her that she couldn't speak to me that way, especially when she was under my roof. That was all I needed to say to anger her. She started yelling at me like crazy and accused me of a bunch of things, like trying to isolate her son and put her down in front of him so he loses respect for her. She told me she had always known that this day was going to come because I had always been a homewrecker and couldn't stand to see the fact that my husband was close with his family, as it would mean I had less control over him. She called me a psycho and said she was here to rescue her son before it was too late, claiming I had no right to interfere because I was not family. I retorted that I was glad I wasn't a part of her family, because it seemed to me like she wanted to run a cult more than just have a family. She completely lost it when I said that and practically launched herself at me. Before I knew it, she had grabbed me by the hair and was physically attacking me. It took my husband mere seconds to separate us and force his mother out of the house. She didn't stop screaming at me, even as she was being kicked out, and kept calling me derogatory things that I didn't even want to mention here because they were just that bad. I was quite shaken up, and I waited for a couple of seconds to calm down before my husband and I called the cops and had her removed from our property. She hadn't left even after my husband had pushed her out of the house and had remained in the front yard screaming at the top of her voice about how I was breaking her family, but she was not going to let it happen. It wasn't until the cops finally arrived on the scene that she stopped yelling, and then she started begging us not to press charges. But it was too late, and my husband and I had already made up our minds that we were not going to drop this so easily. I mean, she had physically attacked me, so I couldn't just let it go because then nothing would stop her from doing it a second time. So we pressed charges against her, and since I wasn't injured badly, they're probably going to let her off easy, but at least it's going to go on record. She was taken away, and she was sobbing uncontrollably when that was happening, which was crazy because just a few seconds before that she had been screaming at us and threatening us. After that, my husband and I decided to start looking for a lawyer so we could get a restraining order against her, because she could not be trusted. There was something very unhinged about her, and I didn't want to risk anything. We also started thinking about moving away, something we had already been considering for a while because this location was kind of inconvenient for my husband, and we were thinking about moving to a place that was equally close to both of our offices. We just want to leave no stone unturned to make sure that she can't get to us ever again, and the same goes for his family as well. It's been a couple of hours since she was arrested, and nobody from his family has tried to contact us yet. But I know that they will be very upset about this, and they might even disinherit him over this. But it's worth it because Sandra needed to be taken down a notch, and I have no regrets about saying that she was a cult leader and then having her arrested for attacking me. She deserved all of it. Update 3. We got the restraining order against Sandra, and it's been a couple of days since then. These past 2 weeks after Sandra was arrested were busy for both of us because we started looking for a new house to move into, and we also had to deal with the drama that ensued later. Of course, there was also the restraining order and the court appearances to deal with. With all that I was dealing with, I didn't have much time to post an update. But right now I can. So first things first. Sandra got off easy with just community service since I wasn't badly hurt. However, my husband's family decided to make a big deal out of it and pretend like she was the victim in this situation, one she had created. They ran their mouths off to every single family member they could find, telling them about how I had instigated Sandra, and that's why she had pounced on me. But when I got the reaction that I wanted, we called the police and had her arrested. They're claiming that this was all planned and had every intention of provoking Sandra just so she would attack us, and we would have an excuse to get her in trouble. So somehow, I'm the bad guy here, even though I was the one who got attacked. It doesn't even make sense, but that's the story they are choosing to go with. Luckily, not many people are buying it, and they are mostly on our side. So they're cutting my husband's family off. In a way, it's true what I said about Sandra wanting to run a cult instead of a family, and that her expectations were unreasonably high and kind of unhealthy. I'm glad I got the chance to say it to her face because she needed to know that she was a cuckoo. And if the opportunity ever presents itself again, then I would gladly say it to her again. Even if that means that she would attack me once more because it would be worth it. But the likelihood of us meeting again anytime soon is low because of the restraining order. Also, because my husband and I moved houses a couple of days ago, they don't know where to find us now, and they have been blocked on all our social media ever since we went on vacation. So that's not a matter of concern for us. Honestly, he's more relieved than I am because he used to say that being around his family was almost suffocating for him, and I can see why. I would probably feel the same way if my parents acted like that and gave me absolutely zero privacy or space of my own. I guess I got really lucky when it came to my family, including my husband. Did you enjoy the story? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe for more content like this.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.